Hello everybody, my name is Christian Swenson and I do videos here on YouTube about autism, autistic consciousness, and life on the autism spectrum. Have you ever seen those pictures of the duck rabbit? You know, you're like looking at this crudely drawn picture of a duck, but like, wait a minute. Oh, it's actually a rabbit. No, wait a minute, it's a duck, and you can't get to see it as a duck and a rabbit at the same time. You're just going to have to flip between them. Or else maybe you see, what is it, the Necker's cube? It's kind of like this. I can't draw a duck rabbit, but I could maybe draw this. Maybe, you know, it's one of these things, and it goes like this, and you're like, which one's the front? You know, is it going like up here, or is it going down there? And you realize that your mind and your eye has to shift to understand it. And you know, that's the moment that, you know, that tiny shift of attention, something like that I wanted to share with you today. A tiny change in perception, a tiny change in orientation towards the world that for me as an autistic individual has helped me a lot recently, and that maybe could help you. And it has to do with time. And it's basically this. We do not share space, but we do share time. Now, I got this idea from a book I was reading. It's called The Sabbath, Its Meaning for Modern Man, by, who's the author? Abraham Joshua Heschel. He was a rabbi who was really involved with the civil rights movement back in the 60s, but you don't have to be Jewish to appreciate this. I'm certainly not. My name is Christian. But you don't have to even be a religious to appreciate what he's going to say. And this is basically it. Every one of us occupies a portion of space. He takes it up exclusively. The portion of space which my body occupies is taken up by myself in exclusion of anyone else. Yet no one possesses time. There is no moment which I possess exclusively. This very moment belongs to all living men as it belongs to me. We share time. We own space. Through my ownership of space, I am a rival of all other beings. Through my living in time, I am a contemporary of all other beings. We pass through time. We occupy space. We easily succumb to the illusion that the world of space is for our sake, for man's sake, in regard to time. We are immune to such an illusion. One of the traps that I fall into is assuming that the world is for my sake, is assuming that the world is me, that I am the world, that the world is my body, and that my body is the world. And as a part of that, I tend to believe that anything independent of me is almost like a threat. I wrote about that in my play. As a part of that, the belief that is in me is that change is a threat. I talked about that in another video I did, you know, autism as a fear of flow or whatever. And what reading this passage did, that tiny shift of attention, was made me realize that I don't only exist in space, I exist in time. The world isn't just laid out in front of me. It isn't just something I can perceive and look at and map. It's not just something that's a part of me. It is something that I move through. It's something I am a part of. Because in regard to space, we can have the illusion, like he said, that the world belongs to me. But as soon as time enters the picture, you realize that you belong to the world. Now, think about it this way, because this is what he also said. In regard to space, I am only myself. I am the only one standing here. But in regard to time, here we are together. We are listening to my words as they come out of my mouth, as I speak them together. And that activity that verb is something that we share and that we are one in. To pay attention to the verb and to leave the noun behind is to enter into connection, into communion. And what I have found is that the more I see the world in terms of time and the less I see it in terms of space, the more it's as if something in me is peeled out of myself, not in a negative way, not in a dissociative way, but in a sense where something that was trapped inside me is now free to join the rest of being. And of course, this thing that was trapped inside me is the me that is supposed to live in time. I think the mistake many of us make as autistic people is to confuse space and time. In a way, that's the mistake our culture makes. We can own space and we can own time. We can try to control time like we control space, but you can't control time. Time's unpredictable. Time surprises us. Time's always new, and what we control is always old. And so, another thing he says in this book is that time has dominion over man, or humankind, I guess he would probably say, just as humankind has dominion over space. It's like this. Like that, yeah. Time is bigger than me, but I'm bigger than space. Now, what does that mean? You can maybe intuit it from what I was just saying, but it's basically that if I only look in terms of space, I can have the illusion that I am God, because I'm here standing at the center of the universe as I see it. And, but if I look in terms of time, those illusions are quickly dispelled. I am not God. I am part of a bigger world. I am not the world, but I am a part of it. See, if it's only this, you have the illusion that you are the thing, but time can quickly dispel that illusion. Time is to me as I am to space. And the activity of realizing that as you move, I am moving, and the realization that we move together is radically liberating. It is amazing to feel the realization that you are not alone because we move together. Now, you might fall into the trap of thinking you can only move after you've looked. In other words, you only move after you, but that's an inversion, right? It's kind of like playing a first-person shooter video game and assuming that, oh, I'm going to wait, I'm going to stop, stand still, then I'm going to turn, then I'm going to shoot. No, you need to move and shoot at the same time. It takes time to move. It takes time to look. And you can't keep time still while you decide where to look. It's a very hard concept to grasp, but if you've played a video game, you know what I mean. If you think that time's going to stop for you to figure out what's going on, to represent the world, you'll realize that it doesn't. It takes time to make a representation of time. There's a famous philosopher named Giorgio Agamben who talks about that. He calls it, what does he call it, messianic time, because he's actually reading certain Christian scriptures in terms of this idea. Basically, messianic time, according to this philosopher, is the time it takes to make a representation of time. Of course it does. There's a time between the moment something happens and the moment I react to it, whether that reaction is thinking or moving or whatever. In other words, in the time it takes for me to see something, that thing has already moved on. And so the time it takes to make an accurate representation makes sure that it is inaccurate. It's kind of like quantum physics, right? You have to assume the Heisenberg principle or whatever. I'm not a quantum physicist, right? But basically the idea is that you could only measure the position or the velocity of a particle and not both. Well, it's kind of like that, right? Because if you're playing a first-person shooter video game, you can ascertain the position of something, but then it's moved on, or you can ascertain the velocity of something, but then you're not looking at its position, so to speak. It's not exactly the same thing, but you kind of get what I'm getting at, I hope, right? Which is that time keeps moving. The world keeps changing. And we are beings in time, and because we're all beings in time, we're all together. But if we step back and assume that the only way I'm going to be a part of this world is if I map it, is if I try to find out where it is, we're going to fall behind and be disconnected. And I suspect that's the lot that many of us have fallen into. That's the trap. But we can leave it. We can get to the point where I am together with you because we are moving together. Because we are acting together. I was just reading Faust. I'm going to teach it to my class in a few days. And, you know, there's the famous Christian scripture, in the beginning was the Word, the Logos. Well, in the book, Faust translates Logos as deed. In the beginning was the deed. And, you know, I think that's healthier. In the beginning was the deed. The verb, not the noun, not the name, not the Logos, but the deed. And if we say to ourselves, in the beginning was the deed, time, and that the name only comes after, we can flip things the right way around. We can realize that we are not alone, but because we are moving, we are together. My name is Christian Swenson. I do videos here on YouTube. I'm going to try to do 3 times a week today, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.